welcome to Where's Wilmington. You know, oftentimes we're reading the news today or even watching the news, or even in our own families, we see people are getting laid off, they're having difficulty finding jobs, getting jobs. It can be very depressing. So today we have with us someone who's hopefully going to help us shed some light on what we can do if we're in the job market, and also if you're newly in school or just graduated and you're looking for a position. Hopefully Robin Wright, who's a career counselor and coach, is going to talk to us a little bit about how to make the process a little bit easier. And I think a lot of it probably involves planning. So let's talk to Robin. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, you're
Good
welcome.
to have you.
Nice to meet
So
you.
I'm sure you've noticed that in the news, obviously, you know, there are a lot of issues with people trying to find jobs or, you know, starting their careers over again, maybe moms going back into the workforce, even college kids getting out of school and really having nowhere to turn as far as how to get a job and how to go about it. I think we probably all could agree that the times are different now than they were maybe when you and I were coming up. I can remember being in school and my parents said, what can you do that will make you a lot of money? It wasn't so much about what are your gifts. And I think our society has maybe changed a little bit to what are you good at and can you do that for a career? So how do you as a life coach feel that things have changed in our culture and in the economy as far as the job process and getting and keeping a job that you love goes?
Well, I think right now, as you know, it's a very tight job market.
Right.
And experts have said that, you know, if you go into finding a job and you don't really want that job, the next person in line who really wants that job is going to take it right out from under you.
Right.
So it's really important that a job hunter today is clear about what it is they really want to do and what marketable skills they have to offer the workplace.
Okay.
So the process that I really enjoy using and that I think has worked for many clients is the parachute model. And it's something that was developed originally by Richard Bowles, and then Carol Kristen has taken it and worked with Richard Bowles to produce a book for teens and young adults. And the idea is to first identify what it is that you're passionate about. What are the interests that really grab your attention, that you want to spend a huge portion of your time being involved with during your work life? Two is looking at what are your transferable skills. Everybody has skills, and every job uses 5 to 7 skills over and over again.
Really?
So yes. So if you can find your 5 to 7 skills, and then you can find a job where they are using those skills over and over again, you're going to find a match that's going to be really good for you and for the employer.
So you'll be a more fulfilled employee, meaning you'll be probably better at what you do and more happy, right?
Yes.
Okay, which is the goal. But let me just play devil's advocate with you just a little bit. What about someone's watching who's saying, oh yes, that's all well and good, but that sounds like a luxury? In other words, my bills have to get paid. Does it really matter if I love my job? Maybe I just need to work in fast food because I can't get anything else. I guess what I'm saying is there might be a frustration level for people thinking it would be all well and good to be able to be an astronaut, but right now I have to pay the bills. How do you respond to that?
Well, there's a couple of things, and that's a very good point, because a lot of people, particularly teens and young adults, you know, they might have an idea of what they want to do, but they really don't understand what that job is,
right,
or how somebody gets it. So it's really important, in addition to identifying the 7 factors that matter to you in an ideal job, that you also do sort of market research. So it's important that you say to yourself, okay, I want to be an astronaut. Well, what do astronauts do? Go online, do some research, get some books out of the library, look at, you know, what does it take to become an astronaut? And then if you still want to go in that path, or be a scientist or whatever, try to find some people who maybe your parents know, maybe your friends' parents know, who are scientists or who are nurses or who are engineers, and talk to them. Find out what it is they do in their job and how they got into their job. Because it may not be that you have to follow a plan that maybe a 4-year school might tell you.
Right.
There might be alternative ways. Now, in terms of the original question, which was, I might have to start out in fast food, that's true. But the question is, do you have a plan after the year or two that you're in fast food?
Okay.
What are you going to do to move yourself into a different kind of role once you're at least able to support yourself in
So
some
it's really
way.
interesting what you're saying. I guess what I'm taking from what you're saying is there's hope.
Yes.
You may have to start out at the bottom rung, but there's hope if you have a plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
And that brings me to a question about what are some of the pitfalls. I know when my mom was out of work for a very long time, she got very depressed. And I also think, you know, writing a resume and filling out applications, after a while you just feel like you could do it in your sleep. So what are some of the pitfalls you think that people face when they're in the job search that they can avoid?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. The first thing is that people can very easily fall into negative self-talk. So the reason I lost that job before was because I did all these things, you know,
Right.
and, oh, I should have known, blah, blah, blah. And maybe you lost the job just because they were downsizing. And it was nothing to do with your performance. But a lot of times people start rethinking, and then they
Right.
get themselves kind of into a spiral,
Well, it's
a
easy to
negative
do
spiral.
when you have nothing but time on your hands and you're rethinking every decision you've ever made. Sure, I can see how people would do that. How do we avoid that?
Well, what people can do is, first of all, think about actual situations where you achieved something, where you did something well. So I call those success stories or life stories or critical incidents. But, you know, sit down and say to yourself, what are 3 things that I've done where I accomplished something and I enjoyed it, and what is it I actually did? Because nobody can take that away from you. They're yours, and you've done them.
Okay.
And that helps people to begin to remember that, oh yeah, you know, I was really good in that project. I was able to complete X, Y, or Z. Secondly, it's important that people find positive people around them.
Right.
And now, you know, that might sound very simplistic, but when you've been out of work for a while, everybody around you can become very edgy. And so maybe you need to reach out to old friends or people that you know could be supportive, or find a job club or a job group so you have other people so you're not just alone. That's the negative self-talk. Secondly, it's important that people don't just kind of lose structure completely in their lives. It's very easy when you've lost a job and you knew exactly where you were going in the morning and when you were eating lunch and when you were coming home. All of a sudden now, you don't have to get up. You don't have to do certain things. You can wait. You can put things off. And so it's easy to just kind of lose a sense of, when am I getting up and starting to do the things I need to do for the job search?
Right.
So it's important that people set some weekly goals. It's important that people say to themselves, I'm going to set aside 5 hours per day for the job search. And what am I going to do in those 5 hours that's going to actually be productive? So one of the other tips I tell people is, only spend 20% of your time on the internet applying for jobs. It's
And why do you say that?
because only 4 to 7% of people find jobs through internet job boards.
Seriously, because you know
Yes.
everyone's always saying, oh, the internet, network marketing, that's the way to go. But there's no human contact there.
Right.
Don't you think it's more important to try to get a face-to-face meeting if you can? Go and fill out the application at the location, check out the facility. That's what I would recommend. I don't know, is that
Well,
antiquated?
It's a little dicey these days because a lot of the chain outfits want you to apply online. You
Right.
can't go and talk to
Right.
somebody, you know.
Right.
So if you're looking at a job at Staples or one of the large chain restaurants, or there's just no way to go in and say, can I please apply?
Right.
But what you can do is you can think about, do I know somebody who works there who
Okay.
can put in a good word for me once I submit that resume online? So, you've submitted it online, you've gone through their hoops, but then you have somebody on site who's able to say, oh, I know Lisa, can you please give her resume a second
Okay.
look?
When do we know it's time to enlist the aid of someone like yourself? I know people are out of work, so they think, I can't really afford to spend that money and time on myself, which it is a gift to yourself, to have a coach in your life. But how would you argue that you really do need a coach and that it's important to have one?
Well, it depends on the person, but I'd say there are several situations where people have come to me and hired me as a coach. So that's how I can answer that question. If somebody is at a fairly high level, they're losing their job, they realize that if they could get themselves organized and really be productive in their job search, they're likely to be able to land something again in 3 months or 6 months.
Right.
But they're not somebody who feels, gee, I'm going to do it on my own, then they might seek me out as a
Okay.
coach to help them figure out how do I put together that that job search so I'm really making the contacts I need to, I'm getting out there enough, et cetera. Secondly, if somebody doesn't know what they want to do next,
Right.
and they're just kind of floundering, many people come to me at that point. They say, I didn't like what I was doing before. I know I need to do something different. I don't know how to choose. I don't know
Right.
what I might go into. If somebody's thinking of paying for graduate school or paying for additional education, then maybe seeing a coach to help them decide I want to go into this field versus that field would be a worthwhile investment.
Right. In my opinion, I think it would just be nice to have someone who's totally on your side.
That's
you know?
true.
You know, when you're in a family situation and you're the breadwinner or what have you, and you're feeling, like you said, on edge. I know what that's like. You know, I can remember being a kid and Dad getting laid off, and the whole house could feel that. So I think it would have been valuable for him to have someone to just go and talk to about, you know, how can I get out of this? What can I do next? Rather than when you're in the home, it's, have you looked for a job? Have you found a
Right,
job? What are you
exactly.
doing to get the job? You know, so it must be nice for people to have that safe space to be able to communicate freely about what they want to do with their life. Just fascinating. Now, I know that you deal a lot with ADHD, folks who have, you would call it a disability, what would you call it, disorder?
It's actually a disorder.
Okay.
Right.
So I know that you deal a lot with teens and young adults who have that as an extra hurdle, if you will, to overcome with job search. So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about really what ADHD is and how that can be a part of the mix when you're trying to get a job. We all have things, I think, that we can admit are not our best areas, if you will. And I think, in my opinion, ADHD is just another situation that we have to overcome. But I know that you deal with that a lot, and I'd really like to talk about that and what we can do to help people to feel more comfortable and get jobs when they have hurdles like that to overcome. So will you stay with us and talk a little bit more about that?
By all means.
Excellent. I also want to talk a little bit about the wonderful tools you brought along with you too. I know we're not all verbal learners, we're visual learners, some of us too. So we have some things that Robin's going to share with us when we come back from the break, and we'll talk a little bit more about how you can, you know, get a job and love what you do, which is what I love. So we'll do that a little bit more when we come right back. Stay right there.
My daughter.
Come here.
I love you, Dad.
Hello there. Welcome back for the second half of Where's Wilmington. Today I have the pleasure and luxury of meeting with Robin Wright. She is a career counselor. She also specializing in helping folks via coaching, folks with ADHD, teens and young adults, and things like that. And earlier, before the break, we were talking about the job search, what you can do if you're out there floundering, trying to find a job. But I want to switch our focus for the second half here and talk a little bit more about ADHD and what part that plays in your career coaching, and really why you actually specialized or honed in on that particular disorder. And I do want to correct, earlier I had said disability. Disorder is the word I meant to use, so I do want to correct that. So Robin, tell us a little bit about what your coaching capacity involving the ADHD, why that's important to you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to say that ADHD is a neurobiological disorder, and it's characterized by inappropriate levels of hyperactivity, impulsivity, and inattentiveness. So the piece that's important is that it's neurobiological. And what more recent research has shown is that has to do with the chemistry of the brain. So it's not something where people are purposely being inattentive or they're purposely being hyperactive. It actually is an alteration in the brain that is a disorder. Also, there are many people who have ADHD. So the National Resource Center on ADHD says that there are between 4 and 9% of school-age children who have ADHD. And 60% of those children will continue to display symptoms on into adulthood. So many of your listeners probably know somebody in their family or have a child or have a spouse who has ADHD. So I think, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight because I think there's a lot of people who may be dealing with a family member who has ADHD. And in terms of career coaching, one of the reasons that I've specialized in ADHD and career coaching is there's a really great match between the parachute model for finding the career that you would love and the strengths-based ADHD career coaching approach. So as a ADHD coach that looks at a strengths-based approach, I really view ADHD as something that, yes, you have a disorder, there are real limitations in certain areas, but that people with ADHD have a lot of strengths. And that what's really important is that people identify those strengths, nurture those strengths, develop those strengths, and capitalize on them in order to be all that they can be.
So what you're saying is we all are pretty much using the same model in that we all want to know what our strengths are and work to amplify them, if you will. But folks with ADHD may feel the need to do that even more so because of somewhat of the limitations that they may have in other areas, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Because ADHD is, as I said, characterized by certain things such as disorganization and daydreaming and hyperactivity or impulsive decision making. But what research has shown is that when people with ADHD are working on things that they are interested in and love, they're able to really focus and they're able to delve into it. So if they can find a job where they're interested in what it is that they're working on, they're much more likely to be successful.
I see.
So there's that piece to it.
Excellent. Well, that is really amazing. So it's good to know that both models work for both people. It's just that you're looking at what your strengths are, really, instead of amplifying your weaknesses. Which brings me to this little item that you have here. This is called a brag book, correct?
Yes, it is.
And everybody needs these. ADHD, no ADHD. I want one for myself. Tell us a little bit about what this is, and I know it's one of the products or services that you provide through your coaching, but tell us a little bit about what this little gem is.
Sure. One of the things that's very important to do to identify your transferable skills, which I talked about before the break, is it is important to identify life stories, things that you've done in your life that you're proud of and that you were the main actor for. And sometimes particularly young people have a hard time coming up with those stories.
Well, they haven't lived as long, so they haven't done as much, right?
Exactly.
How much bragging can you do when you've only been here 18 years?
So this tool is to help them begin to do some of that brainstorming and get some ideas on the table. So then we can use it in the coaching to help them identify their transferable skills.
Excellent.
So the first piece is that they think about what they've done in their lives, just a whole bunch of memories. So who were you living with? Who was your best friend? What sports did you play? And then maybe, oh, gee, did you accomplish something?
So just to interrupt you for a second, there could be some hidden gems in there that you may not see as transferable skills. For example, I have a big family. I'm great at conflict resolution. That's why.
Exactly.
So I would imagine that what you're doing probably has a lot to do with being able to see some of the small accomplishments that you've made in a bigger way.
Exactly, exactly. And the other thing that happens is for students who can't come up with anything on their own, there's instructions in here for, gee, why don't you ask your mother, your coach, somebody in your life, your Boy Scout leader, can you tell me a story of a situation where you thought I shined? Right. And so it gives them a way to do that without being too awkward,
Right.
My coach is requiring me to do this, so would you please?
Right. It gives you a way to open the door rather than just saying, tell me how great I am.
Exactly, exactly. And then what happens is the student takes this and they would put samples, like maybe winning an award or pictures of a mountain climbing trip or something like that, in what is essentially a scrapbook.
Right.
Brings it to the coaching session, and then we talk it through. And we, in that talking it through, we identify some of those transferable skills. And I'm able to tease it out better than if I said to the student, tell me what you're good at.
Right, right. Well, sometimes it's hard to identify that, I think, unless you look at it in a more broad-based way. Tell me a little bit about your philosophy about planning, about how it's important to start the planning process of your life as early as you possibly can.
Yes, it is really important, particularly for people with ADHD, because they tend to be round pegs in square holes.
Meaning?
Meaning, the school environment is probably the most restrictive environment that a child is going to be in their lives. And so people who might be a little distracted, who might not be so organized, they may not experience as much success in school. But they may be people who think very creatively and can go on to become entrepreneurs, or who are really good artists and can work for an advertising firm. But in school, they often are the children who are told, you're not living up to your potential. They're not able to get the assignments in on time, so they're docked lots of points, so they're not getting the great GPAs.
Right.
So if they instead can focus on their strengths and their skills, and then come up with a career plan that says, I want to be a nurse, I want to be in publishing, I want to be able to be an illustrator, and doing illustrations either for stage or for books. And then we can work on, okay, so how do you actually take the steps to become that?
Right.
But they know in their heart of hearts that that's what they want to be. Then they're going to be more willing to take in the school assignments and so forth that they need to in order to reach that goal.
So you're creating value for the student by helping them to see how it fits into the plan.
Exactly, and how it
Okay.
fits into what they want.
Right. And I can also understand, too, our school system is a great thing in this country, and we're doing the best we can to get as many through as we possibly can. So I understand what you're saying. The system is set up for a certain type of learning, and not everybody learns the same way, And I think the school system is doing as best they can to make accommodations for that. But that's probably where you come in, helping the student to focus a little bit differently and see things a little differently, so they don't get frustrated. Maybe they can just realize this is the way the school is running things, but I know that my purpose and my path is a little bit different. So that's a good thing.
Yes, and I do work with high school students. So I work with students 15 to 29, and as I said, I also work with adults beyond that age limit, but particularly with high school students and college students. I do help parents and students to look at what structure can they set up within the home and within the study practices so that the student is able to be more effective. And also, how can that student and that parent better access services from the school? Resources, whether it's they have a 504 plan or an IEP, or a student going into college using support services at the college. So for instance, I have a young man who I've been working with who's at a business college, and he's a very interesting young man. He didn't do well in high school. In fact, his last semester of high school, he stopped going to school. So it was like school refusal, so forth. Had to withdraw from classes, but had enough credits that he could graduate. So he came to me before the school year started at his college and basically was appeasing his mother. And so we had a meeting together, and he really wasn't sure he wanted to do coaching, but he was willing to do it for maybe a month. Did not want to at all ask for support services at college. But I said, well, keep an open mind. Let's think about it. We've been working together for 3 sessions. He realized that he wants to go into science. And so then he was looking at a school to transfer to, because a business college is not going to have that kind of specialty. When he did that, he realized, oh, I have to have a GPA that's much higher. I have to get A's and B's in science. And he wasn't getting that kind of grade.
So creating the value.
So exactly. So now he was willing, once he realized that, maybe I better go see support services. Maybe I better go see if I can get a note taker or whatever. And so he has done that. And he never would have done that
without the assistance.
Exactly.
How wonderful for you to be able to help people set up their life for success, because it sounds like you try to help people remove the imposed or mentally imposed pitfalls that they may be facing. And that's really a wonderful thing. I just want to say that. What a great, fulfilling job it must be for you to be able to help people succeed in their lives like that. We only have a few more minutes, so I did want to ask, what would a first coaching session be like, and how does that work for folks? I've never actually been to a life coach. So what could I expect as a new client?
Okay, so coaches, and I just want to clarify, people call themselves all different things. I would say that I am a career and ADHD coach.
Okay.
And I do work with people around, their school goals, their work goals, their personal lives, but all kind of in that focus of looking at how can you be successful at school and work.
Right.
So when I work with clients, I tell them that coaching is a partnership. And so what we would typically do in the first session is talk about what your goals are, Lisa. What are some of the things that you would like to achieve in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months? What has been getting in your way? What would you like to see different in your life that's not there now? And then I would help you to set some goals. And particularly, I like the idea of using SMART goals. So it's something from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but it's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So I'd be working with you to set that up so that you could actually measure at the end of 2 months or 3 months, did I achieve this goal?
Because if you can't see any success, even if it's small, you won't move any further. Everybody knows that. That's why we do tape measures at the gym.
Exactly.
Right, so we can see our progress. Anything final you'd like our viewers to know today? And I would like to know how we can get in touch with you as well.
Sure. Well, I'd like people to know that ADHD is a real condition, that it is a neurobiological condition. It's not a moral failing of the person who is not attending,
I'm glad you brought that up.
Because
there is a lot of misconception about that.
Yes. 2 is that ADHD coaching can really help a person to see their strengths, almost to see their potential, to address their weaknesses, and then lastly, to be willing to make some changes, adopt some strategies to be more effective in school or life. And that people with ADHD do have a lot of strengths that need to be identified and nurtured and capitalized on. In terms of getting in touch with me, people can visit my website at www.youthleadershipcareers.com.
Excellent.
And they can also call me if they would like a 15-minute to 30-minute complimentary consult to discuss coaching. So the number would be 978-447-1496.
Excellent, and we'll make sure we put that up on the screen for everybody at home as well. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Boy, that half an hour just flew right by. I feel like we could talk for another hour or two easily. Please do contact Robin if you have any questions about anything we've talked about today. It seems like you would be a very valuable resource for anybody, whether they're looking for a job or not looking for a job. You just sound like a really great person to be a friend with as well, which I think is probably why you're successful at what you do. Well, so thank you so much for coming and sharing all that with us. Thank you for watching. As always, you are here on WCTV, and the next time somebody asks you, where's Wilmington, you tell them right here and right here on WCTV. I'm Lisa Capalla. Thanks for watching.